is Dr. Anacleto Belleza Millendez, the founder of the Beautiful Heart Foundation and the host producer of the Beautiful Heart Show at KFVT 15 Silicon Valley Community Media. Today I'm very pleased to meet a very intelligent lady. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please introduce a little bit of your background for our viewers' purposes.
Okay, so my name's Carolyn, and really my background was in interior design and building and construction. But I had an experience when I had moved to Italy in 1999, seeing Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper.
Wow.
And it was right at the eve of the millennium, 1999, and like all countries, they had celebrations planned. So Leonardo's Last Supper had gone through a 25-year restoration and was now going to be open to the public. You know, it was doomed from the beginning, the Last Supper. Leonardo had used this fangled new fresco technique, and so it started crumbling within his lifetime. So they spent 25 years for this restoration, and frankly, I was not really into Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, I knew who he was, but it was just because of the celebration, and my friends from the States were visiting, and they wanted to see Leonardo's Last Supper. Frankly, I thought, the postcard was going to be good enough,
Yes.
and I was waiting to, where I was going to eat lunch that day.
Yeah, well, we had the opportunity of visiting the Louvre Museum in 2001, to be exact, April 2001. My youngest daughter was barely 1 year old, and we were able to see those works of Leonardo da Vinci there.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that you spent more time of his this artwork. But I know during my college days, because I took up AB Humanities for my pre-med, we've been taught so many, great artworks from the East, from the West. So part of Leonardo's work, we were able to criticize somehow.
Yeah.
Now, what made you is there a connection between your academic background and your work?
No, what had happened that day, like I was saying, my friends were visiting from the States. And like I said, I thought the postcard was plenty. But
Okay.
anyway, to be cordial, I went. And something happened to me seeing Leonardo's Last Supper. I mean, it's difficult to language what happened, but if I could, I was there. I was there when, Leonardo's Last Supper is a moment of action. It's when Jesus says to one of his disciples, "One of you is going to betray me." And I was there. I mean, and so when I left, I'm like, well, who is this Da Vinci guy? And I thought I could get a book, get my explanation, and I'd be on my merry way. Well, that did not happen. And I kept pursuing it, looking for an explanation to this experience that I had. And then I started going down a rabbit hole.
So from the Last Supper, then the Monalisa and
Yeah.
some other pieces there.
Well, what had happened was when I moved back to the States, what I realized, I was not, the first person that was into Leonardo da Vinci. There's a whole library at UCLA dedicated to Leonardo. And you quickly learn that every century, every nationality, every language has written about this one man. Now, unfortunately, I didn't know what I was looking for because I just had an experience. So I would go through the catalog. I would look at titles, that interest me, thinking, like I remember seeing a dissertation, Leonardo's 13 Dissections Looking for the Soul. I thought, that's it. I'm going to read this. It's going to give me my explanation, and I could stop.
Wow.
But I did not get my explanation until I discovered the Monalisa knot. And then whatever had glommed onto my soul that day that at the Last Supper left me, and then curiosity set in.
Wow.
Why did Leonardo make up this intricate pattern on the Monalisa? And that started another 10-year journey.
But the pattern, is it consistent with the Last Supper as well?
The knot that he uses in the Last Supper is no, it's not consistent. It's a knot of antiquity. So in the beginning of his career, he uses, like other artists, Giotto, Raphael, knots of antiquity.
So in other words, the Last Supper is the early part of his work.
Right, 1490 is when he started that, where the Monalisa, he starts that in 1503. So within those 13 years, that's really his launching off time, where he starts, we'll find all his knot art will be original. But for the Last Supper, he uses a knot of antiquity called the knot of Isis. Knot of Isis has always been associated with we'll find it in hieroglyphics. So that's how old that particular knot is. And it's always been associated with a female goddess. And its sacred meaning is the binding and releasing.
So with the Last Supper, it's more of a divine work, I think. While Monalisa, he transitioned from that kind of pattern.
Yeah, well, it always has a spiritual connection, and the theme that runs through all of them is representing the whole. Like when we see the Last Supper and we have 13 men, we have that grounder of one female entity. So again, the whole. When we look at the Monalisa, a female, when we look at the pattern and that anomaly of the 3 hexagons in the center, in sacred geometry, that would represent male. 3 male, 2 female. So what we'll see consistently in his work is he always wants to represent the whole.
Yeah, but you're referencing to a woman there in the Last Supper, and I thought that all the people around him during the Last Supper were all his apostles.
Well, they are. So they're all
but
male.
you mentioned about a woman there.
I'm the representing of the knot.
The knots.
The knot. It's a very. For some reason, I don't know why anybody. It's so obvious once I point it out to you.
Like,
so it's on the lower right-hand side of the tablecloth. And it's a very. It's it's not in the shadows. It's not hidden. It's front and center. It's in the lower right-hand corner of the tablecloth, and it's a very specific knot that he ties in that tablecloth.
Wow. And let's talk more about the Last Supper.
Okay.
Yeah, because in the Philippines, you cannot see a home without an image of the Last Supper in their dining area.
Yeah.
Whether it's a wood carving, a painting, a picture, there will always be a Last Supper. And what are your thoughts about the Last Supper in the modern times?
Well, I know there's been a big when the Da Vinci Code came out, and there was a lot of hoopla that was very controversial between theologians and the public, and his storyline, Dan Brown's storyline, was that John, sitting to the right hand of Jesus, was Mary Magdalena.
That's what they presumed.
They presumed that, but I always wondered why there wasn't somebody in the Leonardo da Vinci camp that also addressed it. Because if we look at Leonardo leaves preliminary drawings for the Last Supper. We have several preliminary drawings. And he's very keen on writing which apostles he's sketching in his notebooks. And clearly he writes John. So him as an artist should have been represented on what he was bringing forth. I realize he has John look a little effeminate.
Okay, and John was the one closest to him.
Was very close to him. And if you read in the Bible, it also mentions John is an effeminate looking in the Bible.
That's exactly why he would...
That's why he would have drawn him in that style. And then also, Jesus entrusted John with his mother. Right when he is being crucified, he asks John to take care of his mom. So that, they were, I'm sure he wouldn't say he had a favorite apostle, but John was I would say, very close to him. And close enough that he would entrust his mom with him.
What you're saying now really inspired me to look at my faith that was somehow damaged with the Da Vinci Code. The idea that it was Mary Magdalene beside Jesus, and the presumption that maybe Jesus had a relationship with her.
Well,
So,
not based on the artist.
not based on the artist.
Dan Brown fabricated this story, wove a very interesting storyline.
Right.
I could see exactly why it happened or how he came up with that.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at the artist, Leonardo da Vinci, and his preliminary drawings, and he clearly tells us every apostle in his preliminary drawings, we know that, he is following what was found in the Bible.
So between these two artists, the modern, the Da Vinci Code, and the Leonardo da Vinci's version of the Last Supper, we should see more truth in what Leonardo did.
Absolutely, because he worked very meticulously on that. Now, when the Restoration happened, mind you, that in his lifetime it was already deteriorating, and it took Carmen Brambilla, she was the restorer, 25 years. It was centimeter by centimeter to reduplicate that fresco.
Wow.
Which is housed at Santa Maria della Grazia in Milan, which would have been a refractory. These Last Suppers were always put into the refractory where the clergy would be eating.
Yeah, but then there were some other artists who were also doing. They were also doing the Last Supper, right?
Well, like in Florence, there's like 7 Last Suppers that start like from the 1400s all the way to the 1500s. And in fact, when I was trying to figure out what had happened to me, this unexplainable experience I had seeing Leonardo's, I did a whole study going back to Florence and looking at every Last Supper that had ever been done, because I knew Leonardo would have seen those Last Suppers.
Wow.
But his is completely different. He has Judas on, everyone's sitting on one side of the table. A lot of the other ones in Florence, Judas will be separated and be sitting on the other side of the table.
Right.
But or with halos, so Leonardo's is definitely a moment of action, and you really feel it when you're there. Like I described, you feel you're in that room, a fly on the wall that gets to experience that moment, that important moment that we all know.
Yes.
When Jesus says, "One of you will betray me."
Yes. But a few years ago, I encountered one famous Filipino painter who was also inspired to do the Last Supper, and it's more of presenting the Last Supper with the poor, malnourished children beside Jesus. So the intention maybe is to present the reality in the Philippines that we are so poverty-stricken, food is so scarce, we have so much malnutrition, and children are mostly affected. So this is his way of presenting Last Supper.
And exactly, and when you see the other ones in Florence, each different one, depending on who was the patron, it all changes. One you'll see like a dog, eating something like a little crumb of bread. It really depended on who was the patron and who it was for. And so that makes total sense on the way you'll depict it in the Philippines.
Yes, and I have not seen a version of a Monalisa painted by a Filipino painter, but the Last Supper is one of those like an inspiration for most painters as well. But now, what is this? We focus more on the book.
Okay.
It's more of this is it touching solely on Mona Lisa or?
Actually, no, it's just one chapter. Another chapter will be, there was a very famous controversy happened 2 years ago. There was a painting that came on the market called Salvator Mundi, Jesus, Savior of the World. And they were able to authenticate it, and it sold for a whopping $450 million at auction in 2017. Now, I worked with a not mathematician that, and what to simplify what a not mathematician, believe it or not, there's a division of math called not math.
Okay.
And so what a not mathematician is looking for is just the intersection of lines, over, under, or like a basket weave.
Yeah.
So with my collaboration with this not mathematician, we actually plotted the knots on the Salvador Mundi, this painting that sold for 450 million. See, unlike...
But I've never heard of this work. It's just either you hear of the Monalisa or you hear of the Last Supper.
Yeah.
But this was an interesting art piece then, huh?
It really, on this minuscule level of Leonardo's work,
Wow.
we definitely see the workmanship of a genius.
Wow.
And it wasn't a willy-nilly afterthought.
Uh-huh.
He thinks of these knot crossings years and years in advance. He develops them and he integrates them, and they're very important. And they are like his thumbprint. That's what you
Wow.
realize. And no copyist has ever successfully been able to copy them.
So from these art pieces brought you to kind of mathematical field?
Totally. I mean, and for somebody that practically, didn't do that good in math,
Yeah.
I'm sure my high school math teacher would be blowing his mind right now.
But in brief, what did you discover?
I discovered that Leonardo, these are his thumbprint. And just like you and I,
Wow.
our thumbprints are unique. They're
Yes.
only unique to me, and they're only unique to you. And these are Leonardo's thumbprint, and he leaves them on his paintings.
Very interesting because, as I've said, during my college years, we analyzed, we made critiques of these artworks, but there was no mention like what you're sharing now. And this is very interesting to art students as well.
I agree. I mean, and people are always have this same, wonderment. And all I could tell you is, I'm a fruit farmer's daughter from San Jose, California. And for some reason, I was the one that discovered it or realized it, that it had some kind of significance.
Wow.
So I don't know. It was just maybe for me to find.
Yes, that's why I'm so interested of getting a platform for you to share this information to others, and hopefully our Department of Education in the Philippines will pave the way to share this knowledge of Leonardo da Vinci's work. And what's really inspiring is the divine part of his work that really that Filipinos could relate to it. We're very religious. We're, we look at the Last Supper as a sacred work. So, what do you think about that?
Well, let's take Leonardo's background. He really wasn't set up for a path of success. He was born out of wedlock.
Wow.
Therefore, he was never going to get a formal education. And he writes it in his notebooks. He says, "Sono un uomo senza lettere." I'm a man without letters. And that had a big consequence. He's never going to be a lawyer like his father and grandfather. He's never going to be a mathematician like his best friend and mentor Luca Pacioli, who was the most famous mathematician at the time. And yet, he had this desire to learn about every subject under the sun, including the sun.
Wow.
And so with that kind of humble background, that, he realized it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor or titled or educated or not. Everyone has the opportunity to transform into something more beautiful. And he knew that, and that was his message. And I think for knowing that, and knowing that today we not only celebrated his 500th anniversary of his death, and that's a big deal in this day and age where, we are very fickle. For every 15 minutes, we're on to a new subject, right?
Yes, and talking about 500 years, the Philippines will also celebrate our 500 years of Catholicism in 2021. To be
Yes.
exact, March 31, 2021 would be the 500 years of the first Holy Mass in the Philippines.
That's
And
spectacular.
that is also a good time for you to present a sacred work, the Last Supper, in connection with
Yeah.
our celebration of 500 years
I
of
think that'd
Catholicism.
be fantastic. What an opportunity that would be.
Yes,
To
and
be part of that
I
celebration.
am interested to touch your book you're holding.
Yeah, go
And
ahead.
This is the one that I have seen if I Google you.
Uh-huh.
So at first I was thinking, what's Leonardo's nuts there? So it talks about
Uh-huh.
his work. Wow! And this is available in the bookstores.
I'm in Books Inc., but mostly online, Amazon, or through my website, Leonardo's Knots.
And maybe when you go to the Philippines or some other events in the future, you will do some kind of book signing.
Absolutely.
Sure,
That would
and
be really fun.
yeah, and I am inviting the members and officers of the San Jose Silicon Valley Global Lions Club. I am the president of that organization. That maybe towards the end of my term in June, we will invite you, probably at the studio of KNVT 15,
Okay.
to share this information again. And I'm sure they will appreciate this new new discoveries that not too many would know.
You know what? Fun thing I want to say too is everyone knows Star Wars. Okay, so when George Lucas did Princess Leia with the buns, that's a Leonardo da Vinci preliminary
Oh.
drawing of Leda and the Swan.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to show it to the camera really quick.
Is it the one with curly hair?
Yes,
Wow.
it's just, and that's where George Lucas got it from, right here. So these are
so
these
the,
have been
the braids is also another part
yeah,
of
so
the
right
braiding
here,
of the hair.
these
Wow.
were Leonardo did all these preliminary drawings, and right here, these are the buns.
Wow. Wow.
So his work
Wow.
goes,
Very beautiful.
I know, goes all the way through.
Wow.
So we've lost, of course, Leda and the Swan of Leonardo's, but these were his contemporaries. And see, they do, here are the buns,
yeah,
the buns.
Wow.
And that's
I
what
would, I
George.
would call them braids. Like
Yes.
Yeah.
And
not to-
look at every artist does a different hairdo. So
Yeah.
we've lost Leonardo, so we don't know exactly.
And that's the thing that I don't see anymore. Too much of braiding among women or girls nowadays.
I mean, look at this one preliminary drawing. Now, who would bother doing an eternity knot on the back of the hair? That
Wow.
he's never going to paint the back of her hair.
So
But yet-
see, so detailed.
But look at
Wow.
every knot crossing has been delineated.
Oh, okay, that's the way you do also with hair, right? You kind of weave.
Well, this is all Leonardo's work.
Wow.
These were all his preliminary. Now, I've reworked them for the
Wow.
book.
Wow.
So you could, we were very clear on what were the knot crossings.
Now.
But look at this one here, how intricate. It
You
looks
know,
like a basket weave.
For some reason, the weaving had been a very important, especially the Philippine weaving.
Absolutely.
There was a time when former Senator Nicky Cositeng did some book tour and sharing of our own traditional Philippine weaving. So I don't know if there's a connection, like like the way our old weavers would do it. And
It'd be so
something
fantastic
to
to see,
look at.
to re-look at it with a new set of eyes now.
Yes.
Now that I've brought this to the
Yes, that's
forefront.
another one that would trigger, our weaving industry to flourish again, because most of, that's exactly what the former senator was doing, to bring back the interest in our traditional Filipino weaves.
And you will see that in every culture, these knot crossings in basket weaving, we all have,
Even in our hammock from the bamboos and
Right.
yeah.
it's such a integral part of our lives.
Wow. Now that I realize this has really a deeper meaning. It's just that you started it, the interest,
Like, for instance, another anomaly was in 400 AD. There was a knot known as Solomon's knot, and it's two spheres, one vertical, one horizontal, and it crosses 4 times. That just popped up simultaneously. Rock carvings, mosaic flooring. We'll find it in Italy. We'll find it in Jerusalem. But what's the interesting part for me is that it doesn't matter which religion it was. The sacred meaning of the Solomon's knot was always the same. It's the connection between God and man. And so these are deeper rooted meaning, and like the octagon, we find that in every religion, from Christianity to Muslim. So these symbols run through all humanity, all religions. And it's kind of what binds us, like a knot, what binds us all together.
I think so. That's the key there. The knots would bind us together. Yes. And talking about knots, I remember my mother was a dressmaker, and she would do us beautiful dresses. And when I was on my medical school, I think on my last year of medical school, we were taught the basic of suturing. Somehow suturing also involves knots.
Absolutely.
See?
Yeah.
For you to put back together a part of the body that has been cut or excised, then you do kind of suturing, and in doing that, the principle of the knots is also very important.
And what I find too is that everyone is their own creator, and they make a decision whether that line goes over or under. So next time you're going to lace up your shoes, you're going to hold 2 strings in your hand.
Yes.
And you're going to start a sequence.
Yes.
And you will make a decision whether you go over or under, and then it'll cross 3 times. And when you pull it, you've done your first mathematical knot.
That's basic also in suturing.
Right.
Yeah. I bet our viewers are in the medical profession can relate to this as they do surgery, and then as they suture the wounds, and oh my God, there's that idea of knots.
Right, and you will now think about it. You will the moment you start that sequence, you're going to figure out whether you went over or under.
That's exactly always what we were taught in surgery.
Yeah.
You can even do like underneath to keep the nuts from showing outside.
Right, and you will be the determining person to make that beginning sequence.
Yes.
Whether you do that line over or under.
That's the art part of medicine for us.
Yes.
To make sure that the scars will not be very visible as you do your suturing there, especially in the area of the face, making sure that the nuts are properly tied.
Yes.
And that there will be no chance of gaping. So this is really very interesting that we talk about Leonardo's work, but there's a deeper meaning of it.
There definitely is.
Yeah. And before we close, I would like you to say your last words, and hopefully our friends will be very excited to see you in person in the next couple of months.
It'd be my pleasure. It would be so great.
Yes.
Well, I just think it's a great opportunity that I get to share Leonardo's work on this minuscule scale. And, and on this minuscule scale, you will also see the workmanship of a genius.
Yes, definitely one of the greatest artists in the world.
In the world.
Yes, and we are so happy, and I am personally so honored to meet you. I think God paved the way for this.
I think so too, and I'm very grateful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, and see you in the Philippines.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so my name's Carolyn Cocciardi, and I've written this book on Leonardo da Vinci called Leonardo's Knots. It's for some reason been an overlooked facet of his artwork for the last 500 years. He always leaves an interlocking knot on every one of his paintings, from The Last Supper to the Monalisa. And the reason I made this discovery was I have a long history. I've been doing this for the last 20 years, but what had happened was I made this observation on the Mona Lisa. You know, she's very plain. We don't know if she's rich or poor or titled, and we've never found a contract on her, but he leaves a little embellishment on the bodice of her house dress. And for some reason, we've all thought that it was decorative. Decorative knots have been around for a long time, from the beginning of time. You know, four-leaf clovers, teardrops, interlocking circles. But what Leonardo painted on the Mona Lisa has nothing to do with interlocking circles, teardrops, or four-leaf clovers. He leaves a very elaborate geometrical shape that he embroiders on that painting. And once I made that discovery, then the next question was, why did he make that design? And so that sort of started my curiosity. And once I discovered it, my next thing that I needed to do was, could I find a preliminary drawing? Well, that was a tall order. Leonardo leaves 7,000 pages and roughly 23 notebooks. So in order for me to see if he did make up the design, I needed to find a preliminary drawing. Well, that was a really tall order when I first started out. Just an opportunity to leaf through his notebook exactly the way he left it. One of the reasons why they're not available is that his notebooks are not very user-friendly. They look like a hodgepodge of, like a disarray of a teenager's room. He could be leaving 10, 20 different things all on one page: drawings, calculations, inventory lists, sayings, all on one piece of paper. So it took me many, many years to actually go through all of them. And what I started to do was I would pluck out knots in the array of other subject matters, and I would started cataloging them, until one day I finally did find the preliminary drawing for the Mona Lisa knot. The Mona Lisa knot is made up of 4 rows. It's 2 rope lines, and it sandwiches, frames in 24 octagons. And then the bottom row is done out of 6 cruciforms, and each one is flanked by 2 hexagons or diamonds. Other than in the center, he changes this pattern to 3 hexagons. So once I found the preliminary drawing of the 3 hexagons, I knew that that was my breakthrough, that he had actually been developing this interlocking knot pattern on the Mona Lisa maybe 10 years before he even started the Mona Lisa painting. And so he, as prolific as a writer as he was, of course we know him as the Renaissance man. He really did leave us a big body of work on a plethora of subjects: anatomy, mathematics, draftsman, but he also really liked the nonverbal world of interlocking knots, so much so that he dedicated a lifetime to it, to knot crossings. And these knot crossings are original in every way. No copyist has successfully been able to duplicate a Leonardo knot. They are one of a kind. Mona Lisa, the most famous painting in the world, done by Renaissance artist Leonardo da Vinci, who we're celebrating his 500th anniversary. You know, Leonardo leaves us no clues. We don't know if she's rich or poor or titled. And with no contract being found, well, she remains a mystery. The only embellishment on the painting is a little embroidery. And it's not going to reveal anything new about Mona Lisa, but it will reveal something about Leonardo da Vinci, the artist, the mathematician, and the human being. I've blown up the Mona Lisa knot for you really big so you can see the detail. But in actuality, it's only 1 inch by 4 inch. And for some reason, it's gone undetected for the last 500 years. You see, what we thought we saw and what Leonardo really painted, well, it's as different as night and day. This is where I was standing when I discovered the Mona Lisa knot. In the mid-2000s, I was a art rep for a Mona Lisa exhibition. I had been in Paris. I had met this French engineer who developed a camera that got access to the real Mona Lisa in the Louvre Museum, and he shot her at a really high resolution of 240 million pixels. From that photo shoot, these Mona Lisa images traveled the world.
Now, I could see any pixel on the Mona Lisa with absolute clarity with this technology, but I didn't see it. It was September 2008. We were opening the show in South Korea. And I do what I always do. I walk around the show, and for some reason, I'm stopped in front of this gigantic Mona Lisa that we have in the exhibition. And for some reason, at that height, you know, the Mona Lisa knot is like about 12 inches high. And my brain and my eyes focused. And what I saw was a bunch of diamonds all linked together, and there was nothing loopy about the pattern. When I got home, I immersed myself in Renaissance fashion and motifs of the day to try to figure out what the heck I saw. Mona Lisa's attire and where the Mona Lisa knot is located tells us a story. We're in Florence, height of fashion and the fashion guilds. And unlike today, there are rules about what you wear and when you wear it. Everything you see Mona Lisa wearing has been handmade for her, even her underwear. After her dress is made, its final stop is the embroidery guild. And there's only logically 3 people that are going to come up with the Mona Lisa knot. Mona Lisa, the embroiderer, or the artist Leonardo da Vinci. And when it became clear that he was the designer and the inventor of the Mona Lisa knot, I realized what a big risk he took. You see, the Mona Lisa knot would have never been permitted on a frumpy green house dress. And he broke all fashion protocol of the day to do what he did. Then he spends 1 year painting the 1 inch by 4 inch with a type of painting technique known as pointillism. It must have been very, very important to him. Now the consensus is that Mona Lisa is the wife of a wealthy silk merchant by the name of Francesco Giocondo. And it would have been customary for Francesco to commission the artist Leonardo da Vinci to paint his wife. Well, it's always perplexed me, you know, a wealthy silk merchant. Why wouldn't have he had her lavished in beautiful silks to promote, you know, the family business? Well, the mystery of Mona Lisa continues. Now you're probably wondering what a fruit farmer's daughter from San Jose, California is doing, making a major discovery on the most famous painting in the world that has eluded experts and laymen alike for the last 500 years. Well, I have a long 20-year story, but really, anybody could have seen what I saw. It was on the painting. It wasn't hidden. No x-ray was required. You just had to look and see. It just so happens I was the one that saw it. Now, once I realized about the Mona Lisa knot, I put on a new set of glasses, and now I see that there's a common denominator in all Leonardo's paintings. He always leaves an interlocking knot on all of his paintings, and it's always a little fun where you're going to find it. So in his earlier career, like other artists, Giotto, Raphael, they favored the knots of antiquity. So here, tied to Archangel Gabriel's forearm, is the knot known as the knot of Isis. You would find that in hieroglyphics. It's always been associated with a female goddess, and its symbolism is always the binding and releasing. Now, maybe Leonardo's fascination with knots was because of a surname, Vinci. The verb in Italian is vincere, which means to win or capture. But in Latin, it would be vincoles, which is a bond, as in Dante's Italian, the Paradiso, where it talks about a metaphorical bond, sweet bonds of love, dolce vinci. Now, I know you all have seen The Last Supper, but did you notice on the corner of the tablecloth the knot of Isis? Seems pretty deliberate to me. Now, maybe Leonardo found a clever way of signing his name with a knot in lieu of a signature. You know, it wasn't custom and practice back then for artists to sign their work. Lady with the Ermine. This is Leonardo's first portrait when he works for the Duke of Milan. It's his mistress, Cecilia, and Leonardo lavishes her with a knot called the Eternity knot. Again, this is a knot of antiquity. It symbolizes no beginning, no end. And who knew? Leonardo was working for a family that was into knots. He was working for the Forza family, and their family crest was known as the Borromeo rings, 3 interlocking rings that symbolize their unbreakable bond with each other. Today, it's used in math and science, that logo. It's known as the Beridian rings, and it's kind of neat to know where its origin was, right here. This is Leonardo's last commission. It's called Salvator Mundi, Jesus, Savior of the World. Perhaps you heard about it in the news. It sold at auction for a whopping $450 million. Like the Mona Lisa, Leonardo invents a very elaborate knotting system. Here you'll see all these different colors of strands. In my book, Leonardo's Knots, I worked with a knot mathematician. And what we did is we plotted all Leonardo's knots, and we learned a lot of new things. I don't have time to go into the detail with you, but whoever authenticated this painting obviously didn't take into consideration his knot art. And so just that I could say right now, this knot patterning is not done by the hand of Leonardo da Vinci. Now, to simplify what a knot mathematician is looking for, they're looking for how the lines go over and under, and then how many times it crosses. In this case, it's crossing 9 times. But the top loop crossing and the bottom crossing with half a twist comes undone, and it's known as a nugatory knot. Now, of course, knot math was not in existence in Leonardo's 15th century. But he was in a league of his own as an artist and as a mathematician, and he loves the nugatory knot, as I'm going to demonstrate for you here with the Mona Lisa knot. So the whole Mona Lisa knot with a half a twist comes unraveled and becomes a straight line. Today in knot math, we call that the Reidemeister move. It's a knot that's not a knot. These particular knot crossings Leonardo uses for the Mona Lisa knot, no copyist has ever successfully been able to duplicate the Mona Lisa knot. It is totally one of a kind. I've graphically laid out the Mona Lisa knot for you. It consists of 4 rows, 2 rope lines sandwiched in a chain of octagons. Then the bottom row consists of 6 cruciforms, all flanked by 2 hexagons or diamonds. Other than in the center, he changes it to 3. Now, look how mindful he is on how he does the crossings. The 2 to the left go from right to left, and then he changes the sequence to the right. This is no accident, this is deliberate, and this is a Leonardo knot. And I asked myself, why Leonardo? Why did you do it, and what does it mean? And then I spent the next 10 years trying to answer that question, which I'm going to tell you tonight. You and I primarily think of Leonardo as an artist, but he only painted a dozen or so paintings, and that would have been a real small body of work for a painter of his day. So what is he doing with all of his time? Well, he's writing, and he writes 23 books that are also known as codexes or codices, and they consist about 7,000 pages. Now, for me to exercise my hunch, I needed to find his notebooks unabridged. Well, when I started, that was a tall order. The only place I could find, let's say, Codex Atlanticus, which is well over 1,000 pages, get that opportunity just to leaf through it, like Leonardo wrote it, I could only find it at special collections at Stanford University Library. One of the reasons is his notebooks are not user-friendly. It looks like a disarray of a teenager's room. There could be 10, 20 drawings, calculations, inventory lists, his grocery lists, all on one page. This is a typical page, and as you could tell, this was one of the very first times he does some knot doodles in this lower right-hand corner. This page, unlike all the other pages where I'm plucking out knots amongst an array of other subjects, Leonardo dedicates a very beautiful knot montage. And I've seen this page many times. I think he probably thought he was going to publish it, and even today they use this as book covers. And like I said, I've seen it many, many times, but it wasn't until I put on the glasses of looking for the Mona Lisa knot that I noticed something very out of character on this page. See in the upper left-hand corner, he's using the protractor, the lines are going undulating in and out, over and under, but then something happens. And whatever happens in his mind, he's got to go freehand. And what he freehands is 3 interlocking hexagons. And this will be the preliminary drawing for what ends up to be the 3 hexagons that we see on the Mona Lisa painting. And he does this 10 years before he even starts the Mona Lisa painting. Now, we don't know that much about Leonardo personally. When you look at his 7,000 pages, it's pretty much 99.9% of it is like reading an encyclopedia. He's the quintessential third-person observer of life. But this is one page that we kind of get a glimpse of what's happening to him. He's 30 years old, and it's a very pivotal time for him, both emotionally and professionally. Just got a new job with the Duke of Milan. Since he's been a teenager, he's been working in Florence for the Verrocchio studio, and now he's going to move 200 miles away to start a new life. In the upper left-hand corner, he draws a little caricature of a portrait of a guy with curly hair, upside down with a brick hitting his head. Could it be a self-portrait? Parallel to the portrait, he writes a pensive thought. We only find this a dozen or so times in all of his notebooks. And it says, dimmi come sono passati. Tell me how things worked out. Then on the right is a list of inventory of possessions he deems important. Line 7 says, I'm going to bring lots of knots. And he uses the Milanese word for knots, groppi. In the center of that page, he freehands 4 squares. The largest one is gridded out in 4, and in the very center is a spiral. To the left, gridded out in 16, is a circle in a square. And then the smaller one, gridded out in 6, is an octagon. And these 3 shapes, the circle, the square, and the octagon, he will explore for his whole life. This is the last one he does, 3 years before he dies. Now he's in his studio. He's got the quill, the straight edge, the protractor. He does it in the traditional vertical way, stacked on top of each other. Circle at the top, representing the heavens. The square at the bottom, representing the earth. And that shape that it transforms into the octagon in the center. But out of all the octagons and squares and circles that I cataloged, this is the only one he ever writes anything in the center of the octagon. And before I tell you what it says, let me paint you the context in which Leonardo da Vinci paints this painting we know as Mona Lisa. Well, first of all, he hasn't picked up a paintbrush in 10 years. The last time he painted a portrait was that one I showed you called Lady with the Ermine, galored in eternity knots. There's only 2 ways this painting could come into existence. It's either commissioned or it's freelanced. Freelance was unheard of in Renaissance time. You were a painter for hire. But I believe he did freelance it based on the next set of facts that I'm going to tell you. He starts the painting in Florence in 1503, and then he dies with it in his possession some 16 years later. He's moved a lot of times in those 16 years. And I know you and I think that the Mona Lisa is small. The Mona Lisa is poster size. It's 25 inches by 17 inches. And he's lugging around and moving several times. He goes from Florence back to Milan, then down to Florence, and then to Rome. And then he takes the last 3 years of his life as a retirement under King Francis I in the Loire Valley, into the Italian chagrin. That's why the Mona Lisa is in France and not in Italy. Now, whoever this woman is, there's not one preliminary drawing of this model in his 7,000 pages. And that is more abnormal than normal. See, we have preliminary drawings of some of his most iconic paintings. Last Supper, Leda and the Swan, and even the painting that sold for $4.5 million, Salvator Mundi. But when it comes to the Mona Lisa, zero. The only preliminary drawing we have is of the Mona Lisa knot, the 1" by 4" where he starts that knot patterning system 10 years prior than he's starting the painting. And if I could say that the octagon was his preliminary drawing, I've cataloged hundreds. And I'm here to tell you without a shadow of a doubt that the octagon was his most favorite shape to draw. And he draws it from the beginning of his career all the way to the end of his career. Now, we assume that the Mona Lisa is the wife of a wealthy silk merchant. But when Leonardo died with this painting in his possession 16 years later, nobody in the Gioconda family made claim. And I don't care what century you're from, if you've made a monetary deposit, which would have been custom in practice, you're going to claim it. And we find no historical documentation that supports that. Now, National Geographic came out with this beautiful commemorative magazine this year to celebrate Leonardo's 500th anniversary. The Renaissance man, defined as a person that is an expert on many things, and indeed he was. An incredible body of work for a man that only lived 67 years. The cover that they choose is his famous Vitruvian Man, framed in with a circle and a square, a reoccurring theme that I showed you where it germinated some 30 years earlier on that one sketch notebook page. His exploration about a circle, a square, and an octagon. Now, there's an irony to Leonardo's life of self-study. He was born out of wedlock, and he is never going to hold a professional title. He's never going to be a lawyer like his father and grandfather. He's never going to be a mathematician like his best friend and mentor, Luca Pacioli. He's never going to be an engineer or a draftsman. He's not going to be any of those things. Now, of course, today we value anything Leonardo da Vinci. Bill Gates bought the only notebook codex in private collection. He paid $30 million in 1994, $1 million a page. But in Leonardo's lifetime, nothing ever got published. Nothing ever got published. None of his inventions ever came to fruition, and none of his notebooks had any value when he died. As prolific as a writer as he was of 7,000 pages, he also favored the nonverbal world of interlocking knots, so much so that he dedicated a lifetime perfecting knot crossings, and that no artist or copyist was ever able to duplicate. They're all one of a kind, and which I will mention that National Geographic did not cover in their commemorative issue. And if I could blow my own horn, I'm the only book that's ever attributed to his knot art, and I'm going to tell you on that minuscule scale, you will see the workmanship of a genius. Now, I don't have to tell you what a big deal it is to be remembered and celebrated as we're celebrating Leonardo da Vinci after 500 years. And I know if he came out of his grave right now, he would be astonished based on his track record during his lifetime. I started this self-study 20 years ago, and I was not looking for the greatest artist, mathematician, or the man who studied a tongue of a woodpecker. I was looking for the human being, and the more I studied, researched, and looked, I couldn't find him, till I stumbled upon the Mona Lisa knot. And then it begged the question, why Leonardo? Why an octagon? A shape never found in fashion, and never on a frumpy green wool house dress. And now you're willing to profess your passion front and center on your most prized possession, the Mona Lisa painting, for the whole world to see. And it wasn't until I saw what he wrote in the center of that octagon that gave me my answer. And I know it's what he would want all of you to know, what his life journey taught him. So now, after 500 years, I'm going to tell you why Mona Lisa is smiling, but more importantly, what the octagon meant to him. A circle, a square that can transform into an octagon. And it reads, "Love conquers all." And so out of all of his accolades, I'm privileged to introduce you to Leonardo, the human being. Love conquers all. Thank you. This is the most famous painting in the world. You know, Leonardo gives us no clues. We don't know if she's rich, we don't know if she's poor. The only thing we have is a little embroidery, 1 inch by 4 inch. It's the only embellishment on the painting. I'd go on a limb and just say, I think this is the only reason he painted the Mona Lisa, and what I call the Mona Lisa knot. So as you could tell, it's front and center. It's been there for the last 500 years. This particular pattern was definitely not the norm of 15th century. Doesn't belong on a frumpy house dress. 36 octagons, right front and center. I know it was on a frumpy house dress. I know you weren't supposed to embroider on that, but you know, I wanted to do it eye level, so you weren't going to miss. You weren't going to miss it for 500 years, were you? You know, that's octagons. Like I'm over the moon about octagons. This is what the beauty of this is. This really did take a genius to do this. Does it hold a message? Like, absolutely. And the message is in a language that only Leonardo knew to express his highest sentiments, and that was math.